Hi everyone, Grant K here for the Flame Learning channel. In the previous videos, we looked at the new connected color workflow. Using this workflow, we can establish a metadata connection between Lustre for grading and Flame for any VFX work. So in the middle of a grading session, you can access the Flame product VFX Creative toolset without manually exporting or fiddling with the applications. In part 4, we look at another common scenario during a grading session whereby you've been given an updated cut of the editorial and you need to update the Lustre timeline as well as carry over all the grade and VFX information. So let's examine the workflow steps. In Lustre, switch to the editing menu and choose the browse menu. Currently, you have the original timeline loaded. Scrubbing through the timeline, you can see the grades as well as the batch VFX work on the different shots. Now the updated edit has already been loaded and conformed in Lustre. This could have been loaded directly into Lustre or transferred from Flame using the wiretap server. In the list, you would select the new edit that you would copy the existing grade to. So you will take the grade information from the original timeline and copy it to the newly selected one. To start the process, click Change Cut. Lustre begins to look at the differences between the two edits. When it finds common metadata between the source materials, it matches up the grades to the various shots. When you are using VFX in the shots, this is copied over as part of the grade information. The open timeline switches to the new edit, and we are now working with the updated editorial. If you switch to the editing menu and choose the timeline menu, you can see the timeline we are working with. At this point, I would like to also point out the batch flags on the various shots. Depending on their state, they are either yellow for unrendered or green for rendered. Now, when you perform a change cut containing batch setups for VFX work, the batch setups need to be rendered in order to see the combined result of the grade and VFX. Switch to the Effects menu and look at the Batch menu. Here you will find a pull-down containing the batch effects rendering options. Shot only renders the selected shot in the sequence. Scene renders all the batch effect shots in the sequence. Scene All is similar to Scene, however it performs a force render. This means that if something is already rendered, it will render again. You would use this if the source media has changed outside of the application. For example, a new transcode, dust busting, or quality change has been overwritten on top of the old source media. Incidentally, the shot option also can perform a force render if you choose it over an existing rendered shot. Selection will render whatever you have selected in the sequence. Choose your option and render the batch VFX shots. Once all the VFX batch setups have been rendered, you can check the entire timeline to ensure all the grade and VFX metadata is satisfactory. All of the metadata is still fully editable. If you select a shot and go back to the Effects menu, you can edit the batch setup back in Flame. When Flame launches, it will reference the new editorial timings of the shots, and you can tweak or adjust the effects. Now, if you have multiple VFX shots that you need to tweak, the last thing you want to do is tweak, and then render. A different workflow is after you have tweaked a batch setup, click the Update pull-down menu. Choose to update Lustre. This will send the batch setup back to Lustre's project structure so it's now aware of the changes. But you don't need to render it immediately. You can now go through all the different batch VFX shots and tweak them between Flame and Lustre. Finally, once all your tweaking is complete, you could select the Scene option and render all the VFX and grade information in the sequence. Now, talking about renders, there is one more option I'd like to look at before concluding this video. When it comes to dealing with the subject of editorial, we always have to deal with the head and tail frames. Normally, when anything is rendered or processed, you only process what you need for the edit. But if you switch to the Render menu and choose Local menu, you will find the render options. Here you can choose to include or exclude the head and tail frames for a render. What's important about this option is that you are setting it for Lustre when you render a grade. However, it will also affect the generated batch setups in Flame because Lustre defines the render range for the write node. So if you want to render the head and tail frames as part of the grade as well as the VFX batch setups, then ensure this option is on. The only thing you need to look out for is if you have been shooting very long sources and are only using a portion in your edit, ensure it's consolidated before using this option. Otherwise, you will have to render way too much material for a small shot in the edit. And obviously, this will impact on your storage space. This concludes the Connected Color Workflow series, and more videos will be added based on your feedback in future videos. Be sure to check out the other videos covering the features, workflows, and updates to the Flame 2017 products. Comments, feedback, and suggestions are always welcome and appreciated. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the Flame Learning channel for future videos.